If the update in question is broken or has issues, you shouldn't just go, "It's great, but it's something, it's something." This enforces the mentality that anything new is great, even if what you get is a dark, half-polished mess. You've got to have standards, even as painful as it may be.
Well, here we are again. Honestly, I wasn't expecting to make a video on TF2 after the last one. It was mostly just a rant about the declining quality of Valve's choices. But yeah, here we are again 2 months later. Let's start from the beginning. On the 3rd of December, Valve put out the Smissmas 2020 event, with the inclusion of the usual hats and festive weapons, but with new maps as well to everyone's surprise. While previous Smissmas time updates have included maps, this is the first time that Valve has added Smissmas-themed maps. It's an interesting concept, as long as it pays off. Let's take a look at the maps. First up, we have 2 new reskins, a player destruction version of Sawmill called Snowville, and a festive version of Landfall called Snowfall. Snowfall is relatively straightforward, as it's a 1-for-1 reskin. The new visuals look absolutely beautiful, albeit there's a few issues with the lighting. Snowville gets a bit more interesting, as they change up both the game mode and map design. New shortcuts are added to the map to encourage more flanking, as well as giving both teams easier ways to get to all the capture points. We also got 2 unique maps. Pier's an older community map, back from around 2011 to 2015-ish. Overall, the map is very well done. Visually, it's pleasing to look at, and the small touches make you just want to keep playing more. If I had any complaints, it'd be that the roundabout cart path in town feels a bit confusing at times, and that the ending explosion is currently bugged. That leaves us with one last map. Oh. Let me start with 2 things. 1, this map is no way the map creator's fault. Well, kinda. But at the end of the day, it was Valve who looked at this and said, "Yes, great, add it." While there are a lot of questionable decisions made by the map creator, at the end of the day, Valve apparently thought that this was content with a quality on par with their standards. So harassing the map creator themselves is honestly counterproductive, and doesn't solve anything. At the time of writing this, they've already disabled comments on the map's workshop page. If anything, complaints should be promptly sent to Valve, as they were the ones to okay this to begin with. Secondly, it's not just me complaining about Valve's standards this time around. With Bloodwater, some people enjoyed it for its chaotic gameplay, and just shrugged it off as a Badwater reskin. However, a lot of people don't like this new map. YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, multiple Discords, even the damn Steam forums. A lot of people are agreeing that this map was a pretty big misstep by Valve. So let's dive into Valve's latest screw-up, with Wutville. Okay, I need to address our first point right away. The visuals. I personally do not find the visuals of this map appealing. Imagine if you were to take one of those ironic ugly Christmas sweaters and design an entire map to look like one. The buildings all look very tacky and are incredibly noisy. They look more like Pyrovision textures thrown into a blender. It looks incredibly out of place compared to the regular TF2 textures used on the map, and quite honestly, it makes this map look more like a trade map than anything official. This also completely contradicts the map creator's idea of the map, which we will get into later. What's honestly baffling is that there used to exist a daytime version of this map, with much more subdued textures. This looks leagues better than the final product, and looks like something that the TF2 team would actually come up with if they wanted to make a Smissmas-styled map. Nothing's noisy or oversaturated, and if you just added some snow, it honestly wouldn't be that bad, if just a little repetitive. Although that's to say they might have added a little too much snow. Around the map, you'll see props buried in the snow, which is a nice visual touch. But then you get to some ammo and health kits that are buried in the snow as well. From a gameplay perspective, this is a big no-no, as they can obscure interactive items, not to mention making them unreachable. It also looks strange, as you have what is a paint texture rendered over the snow, completely unbroken and solid. However, this was written off by the map creator as purely aesthetic, as it's supposed to be like it is sitting in snow. I'm gonna call bullshit on that. This was pointed out multiple times back when the map was being developed, with not a single explanation from the map creator. Not once did they say that it meant to look like this. On top of this, they even fixed one of the packs back during development. If it's meant to be in the snow, then why are you lowering the snow on this one too? All you had to do to visually fix this was to either create 2 small divots in the snowbank, or erase 2 holes in the detail texture, to give the impression that they were sticking out. I chalk this up to more of the map being unfinished, which it most certainly is. There's only a few other minor gripes I have, such as the bad clipping on some props, or how the fade distance on some props was set too low. Now that I've gotten my personal gripes out of the way, we can discuss the gameplay issues. Let's start with the spawns, which are broken on multiple levels. First, this big blue spawn here is completely broken. Engineers can build in here, and switching classes kills the player instead. This is most likely due to the big blue spawn being a recent addition. It is incredibly obvious that the design of every spawn room in the map was copy-pasted, and the big room in the blue spawn was a new addition that was tacked on. I can even find the feedback related to this. This means that it's missing the funk respawn room brush that should always encompass a spawn room. Though since all spawn rooms appear to be copied, similar flaws apply. Since only one exit exists from each spawn room, you can easily be camped if the other team gets the upper hand. But not even the upper hand, I can easily target players while they're in spawn. A typical spawn room has the design where from looking in, you shouldn't be able to directly see where an enemy can spawn. This, and multiple exits, prevents the other team from camping spawn and spamming projectiles into it. Wutville elects to instead make two separate spawns for the first blue spawn and the final red spawn. While this works for the first blue spawn, the final red spawn chokes back down into a single point, which makes this whole spawn room split pointless. It also turns out that the flame particles can go through spawn doors, giving players another means to spawn camp. Now let's talk about the sightlines on Wutville, which tends to be the worst issue in this map. These sightlines are gigantic. So fucking gigantic that the fog on the map actually sets in before you can even see the other side. This map is one giant sniper's paradise, and you can easily get a few headshots off before other classes can get within range. This is only made worse with the addition of non-solid trees, which can easily hide a player as they line up their shots. Sadly, there's not much that can be done to fix this without overhauling quite a bit of the map's layout, which would be a big undertaking at this point. This was also pointed out during the map's development, and left unchanged. One last nitpick to add to the gameplay is that a handful of props are just missing collisions. Besides the trees that everyone loves to hide in, a couple of props in blue spawn don't have collisions. More notable though are these bushes, where some bushes do have collisions, while others apparently do not. This was also pointed out in the map's development. Let's move on to another big issue with the map, the performance. With most maps in TF2, I can easily hit 100 frames. Using Pier as an example here, only near the end of the map do I start to dip into double digits. This is because the map was built with an aggressive area portals and closed design, which lets objects de-render after they leave your view. It's most noticeable when using the wireframe render command, as you can easily see every prop and face that's currently being rendered. Now switch over to Wutville, and you will immediately notice that almost the entire map is being rendered at any given point. This is attributed to two main issues. First is the aforementioned giant sightlines, forcing a lot of the map to be rendered at once. The other issue being that these buildings are not actually brushes, but props. In the source engine, props are not used to determine what a player can currently see, and thus the engine assumes that the area is just one big open area. This could have been fixed if no draw brushes were added inside the buildings, as the engine would consider those valid view blockers. The result of this prop mess is a constant low frame rate, which has been noticed by many players. But if you're wondering why everything is a prop to begin with, that's because the creator of the map is 13, who is the creator of the Polygon Count site known for expertly crafted models. Lots of older community-made items came from here before the workshop was created. Since 13 was better at modeling than mapping, they decided to make the majority of the map as props instead, which was the easier route for them. While it worked at the end, the performance suffers as a result. One last thing I wanted to bring up is the story of this map. You see, this map is inspired by the TF2 comics.
Oh, motherfucker.
The intention was for this map to be based off the old Saint Nick character, who would abduct naughty children and force them to work in sweatshops in the South Pole. And just look at the man himself! A grizzled, weathered face, long, crooked nose, and just the most evil sneer. Hell, his reindeers have spiked collars and an eye patch, while his sleigh is a rusted pile of metal bolted together. That's metal as fuck, dude. Now put that image alongside this. I don't know about you, but bright, techie wrapping paper does not exactly give off the same vibes as old Nick here. In fact, this map in general does not give off those vibes. The map is described as some old grain silos and the remnants of wood crates, made into a makeshift prison. Really now? Your older version of the map looked a lot closer to this described shantytown than this pixie wonderland. And what even is the final point meant to be? It's described as old Nick's bottomless pit, and it sure is, but wouldn't this final point be the sweatshop then? After all, there's a generator turbine right here, and a more industrial looking room. But there's nothing at all in the rest of the map that would give you this idea. It just makes this room at the end look completely out of place with the rest of the map. This whole map is just one big identity crisis. And that's all I wanted to rant about. Other people have complained about the entire map being an upwards battle, or the confusing layout of the map, or the insane amount of exploits. Those don't stand out to me as much as other serious issues. Well, except for the exploits, but those are bound to crop up. Now, you may have heard me mention a few times about the map's development. This map's development is still documented in its original TF2 maps page. It's very insightful on the issues with the map, and I do suggest you give it a read. But it brings to light a lot of clues that lead me to believe that this map was never fully playtested, if at all. 13 mentions struggling to find people to playtest this map, and within a month, completely abandoned the map and left the TF2 community with spite. Now, had it ever been playtested, these issues with the sightlines and spawns would have been immediately noticeable, which leads me to another question. How did Valve not catch this? It would stand to reason that they would at least test the map before accepting it, right? Like, one quick game on the map you're about to add wouldn't be a bad idea, right? This leads us to the big question. Why was this map accepted in the first place? And the honest answer is that nobody knows. Valve decided that this map above all others should be chosen, which is honestly an insult when you see some of the other maps out there. It worked fine with Screen Fortress, as most of the community just gobbled it up anyway and brushed these 3 separate patches aside. But this is a real problem now. A lot of the community is upset about this, and asking serious questions. First off, why was this map chosen? The issues with this map are not hidden. They're as plain as day, and even just a quick check can confirm any suspicions you may have. People are seriously starting to question what Valve's selection process is, and rightly so. The general consensus is that Valve is only looking at this part of the workshop, and not the map itself. It would explain how a lot of maps from years ago are suddenly being added, regardless of their levels of quality. Next is the timing. Allegedly, Valve made their decisions around the 29th, and notified content creators shortly afterwards. That's 4 fucking days from release. 4 days to turn a map around and be ready. And this is where I blame both Valve and the map creator. Valve for even thinking that this map could be fixed to their standards in 4 days. This at least gives them the benefit of the doubt, and makes it sound like they were at least aware of the issues. And to the map creator, who thought that this map could be fixed in 4 days, he passes off everything as not having time before release, and how he didn't even have any of the tools or map files ready. And yet he full well knew that this map had never been finished, let alone tested. And yet both parties agreed to this in the end. If I had to make speculations from this whole mess, it's this. Valve doesn't actually playtest the maps they had. It's no secret that the TF team is very small, or even non-existent at some points. And Valve is a very secretive company, rarely letting outsiders see in. So where exactly would they even get enough players to playtest the map? The answer is you. Since the map is on the workshop and rated up high enough, it obviously means that people have played it and signaled that this map is A-OK. And thus, Valve skirts around not needing to playtest the map. The only thing that's worse than this is if Valve actually did playtest the map. If they played this and couldn't notice anything that raised a red flag, then that speaks volumes for the current dev team. It is fundamental that a dev team understands how their game functions, or else you're going to end up with even worse mistakes. And so we look to the future now, to how this is going to be fixed. And sadly, it does not look good. 13 has already come out stating that things like textures and models will be fixed. The problem, however, is that the flaws of this map go down to the core layout and design. You're not going to be able to fix giant sightlines like these with just a few tweaks to some models. Spawnrooms need a lot more than just some detailing work. Bigger changes need to happen, but to hear it from other accepted mappers, the grace period for maps is technically just for bug fixes and shit. When they email for a map, they want it as is. That means that unless Valve is very forgiving and patient, these layout issues are here to stay, as they see it as already fine. They don't care what the majority of the players think, because in their mind, it's perfectly fine. It's like with the constant updates for Manpower, a game mode that gets so few players. Valve honestly does not care for your opinions, and they will keep doing whatever they please. Whatever the outcome of this may be, I hope Valve really decides to make some internal changes. I fear that at the rate things are going, they're going to end up alienating a lot of their diehard fanbase. Something's wrong with Valve, and it needs to change.